In this video, I'm going to teach you how to set up your own muscle group specialization phase. And by that, I mean how to set up a program that's going to allow you to prioritize 1 to 2 muscle groups at a time and grow them faster and more efficiently than all of your other muscle groups. Now, this is a great tool if you've been lifting weights for a while and you've found that you have a lagging body part or a lagging muscle group, or perhaps you even have an imbalance in your body that you want to correct. So I'm going to teach you how I build these types of programs with my one-on-one online fitness coaching clients. And if you want to learn more about my online fitness coaching program, you can check out the link in the description to learn more. Now, I've also been using this technique personally with my shoulders and I've seen really nice results. And before we dive in, if you find content like this helpful and you can drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, that really helps me out a lot and helps the channel grow. And you can also make sure that you're on my mailing list. I'll have a link to that in the description as well. And once a week, I send articles, videos, podcast episodes out to my audience that help them with their fitness goals. And when you sign up, you also get a free copy of my 21-day program, my free dieting guide, and a free cookbook. All right, with all that out of the way, let's dive into how to set up your own muscle group specialization program. And before we get into the specifics about how to prioritize 1 to 2 muscle groups, I think we should just go over some basic need-to-know information about how to build muscle. So let's start top to bottom here. First and foremost, training volume. Training volume means really the overall total amount of work that you're doing in the gym for each muscle group. In general, to build muscle, you want to be doing somewhere between 10 to 20 hard sets per muscle group. Now, later in this video, I'm going to outline for you something called training volume landmarks, which are a certain amount of volume for each individual muscle group that's going to help you grow that muscle most efficiently. So this number, 10 to 20, is going to vary per muscle group, but in general, and especially for beginners, if you're looking to get started with building muscle, if you're in the 10 to 20 hard set range, you're going to be doing everything that you need to from a training standpoint to build muscle. Now, let's focus on what I said right there about hard sets, because that's a really important piece to the puzzle as well. You must be training legitimately hard. What does legitimately hard mean? Well, it means that in each individual set, you are getting legitimately close to the most amount of lifting that you can do. You're legitimately getting close to failure, okay? Now, again, for beginners, you don't have to go to failure to train a lot of muscle, but this video and this presentation is more geared toward people who have been lifting consistently for at least a little while. And the deeper you get into your strength training career, the more intensity is going to matter and the more that proximity to failure is going to matter. So you should be taking each set for each muscle group that you want to grow to within 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 reps of failure, okay? That's what it means to train legitimately hard. If you're training less hard than that, you're not going to be putting yourself in position to build muscle as fast and efficient as you probably want to. You need to give your body a stimulus to force it to grow. Think about what you're doing in the gym. When you go in the gym, to lift weights, to build muscle, you are trying to create a stimulus to your body that causes your brain to react and say, wow, that was really hard. We trained a muscle group and we got to the point where we almost couldn't do any more with that muscle group. Brain says to the body, well, in order to do that more efficiently next time, we need to make some changes. We need to make some adaptations. We need to build muscle. That's essentially what you're trying to do with each and every one of your sets. So you're in the 10 to 20 hard set range, and in each one of those sets, you must be training legitimately hard. And the last thing to cover is nutrition, because no matter what you do in the gym, that's just the stimulus. What you do outside of the gym is what is or is not going to allow your body to really recover and make the adaptations that you want for building muscle. So eat to build muscle. You're going to want to most of the time be in a calorie surplus. I often encourage people to be in a slight calorie surplus, and I have a link in the show notes to this episode to an article I've written on how to set up your calorie surplus and just how to figure out how much food you should be eating. So that's important because, you know, when your body needs to make an adaptation, well, it needs to build muscle tissue from something. So you need to be giving your body more calories than it needs coming in. And if you're doing that, then it can utilize those calories to build muscle. Also, adequate protein is very important. You're watching this video, you probably know at least a little bit about protein, but protein provides the building blocks for our bodies to be able to build muscle, okay? So I often encourage folks to eat around 1 gram of protein per centimeter of your height, which is a little bit different than a lot of recommendations out there. You'll often see to eat 1 gram per pound of your body weight. I often find that that's not best for most people. So I like to go with 1 gram per centimeter of your height. I'll provide a link to an article that'll give you more information about that as well in the show notes. And lastly, we want to be in a calorie surplus, but we don't want to be filling that calorie surplus with trash. We don't want to be eating mostly processed foods that aren't giving our body quality nutrition. So try to fill up your calorie surplus with as many mostly whole and nutritious foods as you possibly can. Okay, now we can start to dive into how to set up this muscle group specialization program. And the first place that you're going to want to start is figuring out your training frequency, how often you're going to be in the gym lifting weights. The first thing you need to figure out is how many days per week are you feasibly going to be able to train? This is really important. A lot of people are really excited about building muscle and they want to be in the gym all the time, but there are a lot of factors that you need to consider. The most important of which being what's going to be sustainable. What can you see yourself being able to show up consistently and complete? Now, what I will say is, generally speaking, if you want to build 1 to 2 muscle groups and prioritize them in this type of program, while also training everything else, part of the theory here is that you build a couple muscle groups while you're at least maintaining everything else, but potentially building the rest at a slower rate. You're probably going to have to train at least 3 days a week to be able to fit all of this volume in. So I would say at least 3 strength training days a week is required. I don't know that I would go higher than 5. You'll see down here I say plan for at least 2 to 3 rest days per week, because in addition to that stimulus, building up that volume that's going to help your body build the muscle you want to, you also have to be resting and recovering. So I find personally a sweet spot to be about 2 rest days per week with about 5 training days, but your lifestyle is going to dictate how you set this up. So you got to start here. How many days per week are you able to train, and how many days per week are you going to be able to consistently show up, because consistency is key. And now beyond that, you're going to have to figure out then how many exercises per workout are you going to do for those muscle groups that you're trying to prioritize. Let's say you want to do biceps and you're going to start with 15 sets per week of biceps. And if this all sounds confusing, I'm going to break down the volume landmarks and how you're going to do this for each muscle group here in a second. But let's say you want to do biceps and you're going to be doing 15 sets per week. If you're training 3 days per week, that means you're going to probably be doing 5 and 5 and 5, right? And if I could write the number 5, that would actually look like 5. But you're going to have to split it up probably into something like 3 days of 5 sets. Let's say you were doing 4 days a week, you could potentially do 4 and 4 and 4 and then 3 across 4 days of training a week. You could split your bicep volume up that way. You could also do it completely different way where, say you are training 4 days a week, but you don't want to hit biceps in every one of those workouts. That's okay. If you're doing 15 sets, maybe you do 8 sets in one workout and 7 sets of biceps in another. You can break this stuff up really any way that you want, in any way that's going to be most feasible for you, be most sustainable for you, be something that you enjoy the most, but you have to figure this out ahead of time. You can't just try and jump in and hope that it all works out. You're going to want to outline some structure here. Okay, so now you've figured out how often you can train, how you might split up volume throughout the week, and we can move on to figuring out what muscle groups that you actually want to prioritize. So the thing that I would recommend you do is get out a piece of paper. I literally do this all the time when I create a program like this. Get out a piece of paper and just write down all the muscle groups in your body that you train. I got those written down here. There's a bunch of other numbers on the whiteboard, and I'm going to explain what those are in a moment. But abs, back, biceps, triceps, calves, chest, front delts, glutes, hamstrings, quads, rear delts, side delts, traps, all of those muscle groups that you would probably target with different exercises in the gym. Lay those out on paper and figure out which ones are of priority to you, okay? So if there are 1 to 2 that you want to prioritize, and I can use a recent example from my programming, my side delts are a muscle group that I have been trying to prioritize recently, and the same thing for my biceps. My current program is a biceps and side delts specialization program, okay? So when I wrote down all of these muscle groups, I put a star next to those muscle groups because they're the ones I want to prioritize and push volume and intensity on the most. But I don't want you to stop there. I also want you to rank the priority of all the other muscle groups that are available too. So beyond those two that you want to prioritize, there may be a bunch that you are interested in just maintaining or maybe growing but at a slower rate. So some of these may be on a second rung or a second level of priority, which is great. And then there also may be some that you just don't really care all that much about. For me personally, I can tell you, like, abs, I've trained abs so much in the past that I can do nothing, or I can do like 3 sets a week and maintain my abs. It's just not something I have to train very much. Glutes, for whatever reason, like, I have big glutes and I don't need to train them and I still have big glutes. It's just how it works out. Like, there are going to be muscle groups like that for every individual person. Another one, calves. I have very small calves. It seems like no matter what I do, nothing happens to them. So I've just kind of decided, you know what, I don't really care about them. And it's not something that I'm super concerned about, like getting an adequate amount of volume in right now for. So there's going to be 3 levels for you. Number 1, what you are most interested in and that you want to prioritize in this specialization program. Number 2, what you want to essentially maintain or grow at a slower rate. And then number 3, the muscle groups that you just really aren't concerned with at all. And now I'm gonna show you how to build out the volume for those muscle groups that you want to prioritize. But before I do that, I want to just briefly touch on the concept of fatigue and how training certain muscle groups is going to be more fatiguing than others, okay? So I mentioned that I'm doing a biceps and side delt specialization program right now. That is not a very fatiguing program. If you think about just the size of those muscle groups, your biceps, your side delts, they're not very big muscles. And an easy way to figure out what muscles are going to be the most fatiguing to train is to look at the size of the muscle that you're training. It's much more fatiguing to, say, train quads than it is to train biceps, okay? Much larger muscles, much more muscle damage is going to happen. You're most likely going to be lifting a whole heck of a lot more weight, which will then also create some systemic fatigue in your body. So it's important to understand that, because you can't really specialize and prioritize 3, 4, 5 muscle groups in this type of program. This is really intended for 1 to 2. And I would say you can specialize and prioritize 2 muscle groups when you're doing at least one of them as a less fatiguing muscle group. It's going to be a lot harder for you to, say, prioritize your chest and your quads, which are 2 massive muscle groups in your body, because you're going to be having to do a lot of compound exercises to train those muscle groups. And again, larger muscle groups lead to more fatigue, lifting heavier weight, more muscle damage, all that stuff. That's going to make pushing volume on both of those at the same time a lot harder. So what I like to do is to have 1 to 2, limit it at that. And if it's 2, have at least one of those 2 muscle groups be one of the less fatiguing ones to grow. Now, right now I'm doing 2 muscle groups that are both quite small. But if I were to do quads and I wanted to focus on another muscle group, I might do quads and side delts. I would not do quads and my back or quads and chest, okay? You understand what I'm saying? Let's make sure that we're managing fatigue appropriately. Okay, now let's talk about training volume landmarks. That's what the numbers are that you see all over this whiteboard. So you see at the top I have MV, MEV, and MAV, and the numbers in each column underneath those acronyms, okay? What those acronyms stand for are really important, and they stand for maintenance volume, which is the amount of volume you need to do to maintain the muscle that you have for that muscle group, okay? MEV is minimum effective volume, and what that stands for is the minimum amount of volume you need to do. And again, these are hard sets. The minimum amount of volume you need to do to make that muscle grow. And then MAV stands for maximal adaptive volume. And what that means is somewhere in this range is going to be the maximum amount of volume you can or should do to make that muscle group grow. So specifically, when we're talking about wanting to prioritize a muscle group and grow a specific muscle group quicker than the others, more efficiently than the others, we're going to be pushing volume on that muscle group. So again, for biceps, when I want to specialize in that muscle group, I'm going to obviously at least need to be doing the minimum effective volume, which would be 8 sets, but really I should be somewhere between 8 to 20 sets in the training block that I'm in. Same for side delts, somewhere between 8 sets for minimum effective volume to 22 sets, which would be the maximum amount of volume I could adapt from. So that means that the maximum amount of volume you could recover from. Those are important numbers, and they're going to help guide you to figure out how much volume you should be doing. Now, for those muscle groups that you're going to be prioritizing, often what you'll do is start with a certain amount of volume and increase that volume as your block of training moves along. And that's something where a coach can help you figure out how to do that effectively. But these numbers are going to help guide you. And you'll see, like, the cool thing about this is when you want to prioritize a couple muscle groups and bring everything else back down to maintenance, it makes it really easy to figure out, okay, I want to prioritize these muscle groups. Now I know how much, give or take, I should be doing for those muscle groups. What should I do for the other muscle groups? Well, it's all laid out for you here. So while I'm building my biceps and my side delts, for back, I need to be doing at least 8 sets. That's pretty easy. That could mean 4 sets of back twice a week. There are some muscle groups that you don't have to do any volume to maintain them. And I mentioned my abs before. I've done so many ab workouts in the past that I don't have to do anything to maintain my abs. So I have a lot of time right now where I'm not doing any abs. I don't do really any front delt work. I don't do any direct glute work. I am doing a little bit of rear delt work, but very minimal, like 3 sets. You could do none. You don't really have to do a lot for traps. Oftentimes that's also because, you know, muscle groups like traps and glutes and front delts, they're involved in other types of compound exercises, so you don't really have to target them directly. But that's what my recommendation would be, is for those muscle groups you want to prioritize, make sure you're in this range of minimum effective volume to the maximal adaptive volume. And then for that second tier, that second level of priority, you're going to want to make sure you're somewhere in this minimum effective volume or at least maintenance volume. And then for the muscle groups you don't care about, maintenance volume or nothing is pretty much how you can roll. I mentioned throughout a training block, and I should probably explain what that means. And the way I handle it with my clients is a training block is normally somewhere in the range of 6 to 8 weeks long. Normally we do 8 weeks long, and within the training block I have 2 4-week phases with my clients. So when I say you're going to want to progress your volume across a training block and increase it for the muscle groups you're prioritizing, what that would mean is, say, okay, if we are doing biceps, maybe you start the training block by doing 14 sets of biceps, but as we go across those 8 weeks, we start to add sets here and there so that we get closer to 20 as we get to the end of that training block. So it's not like, okay, if you're doing 8 sets of biceps right now, you should be doing 20. I would not recommend that. What I would recommend you do is try to slowly creep that number up as a training block goes along. And then normally what happens is at the end of a training block, then you deload, and then you start to figure out what that next block of training is going to look like. And what you could do is prioritize 2 muscle groups in one training block, and then deload, and then pick 2 other muscle groups that you want to prioritize and progress those in the next block of training. Okay, how about workout structure? You know the amount of volume you need to do, you know the muscle groups that you're prioritizing, you know how many days you're going to train. How do you actually build out the workouts? That's another important piece of information. Again, that's something that a coach can help you do, but if you want to do this on your own, you absolutely can. What I generally recommend is, if you have 2 muscle groups that you're prioritizing, those should be the ones that start your workouts off, okay? So if you're doing what I'm doing and you're prioritizing biceps and side delts, your workouts should start by hitting either biceps or side delts because you're freshest, and that means you can give the most energy to those muscle groups when you're training. As any workout goes along, you get more fatigued. So if you want to build your biceps or you want to build your back and you do all of that work, at the end of your workout, you're not setting yourself up for the best possible results. So start your workouts with those muscle groups that you want to prioritize, and that'll put you in the best possible position. Then all of the other muscle groups that you're either going to maintain or try to build more slowly, those can fall in line next because they're not a priority. You outlined what your priorities are. those are not the priority. That doesn't mean we're not going to address them, but we're not going to be giving those the best possible energy and the best training performance that you have, because we have 1 to 2 priorities that we really want to focus on. All right, and at this point, you've done all of the grunt work, you've figured out all the details. Now you just really need to plug and play what you want to do. So you've decided what muscle groups you're going to prioritize. You know you need to put those first in your workout schedule, your workout calendar. So how does that all come together? Well, here's a way that I might do it. Let's continue with this bicep and side delt specialization example that I've been using. Well, I want to specialize both. I want to prioritize both. So what I might start off with is a side delt exercise to start off day 1. Maybe I'll do 4 sets, and then I'll go next with biceps and do 4 sets. And then since I did that on the first day, I might reverse it the second day and start with biceps. We'll do another 4 sets, and then I can follow that up with side delts for 4 sets, okay? And just like that, I'm prioritizing these muscle groups. I already have 8 sets of both through my first 2 days of my strength training program. As we get into the second 2 days, I can basically just replicate this again, depending on how much volume I want to start with, and plug and play those over to day 3 and day 4 as well. And then after that, I'm just plugging in all the other muscle groups that I want to be training to hit the amount of volume that I want to be doing. So, obviously what I would do here is then after I outline the amount of sets I'm going to do, then I'll start to plug and play specific exercises. But then, let's say I want to be hitting 8 sets of back throughout the week. So then I'll do back on day 1. I'll plug in 4 sets. And then as we get over to day 3, I might continue to bring this information over and do the same thing, right? And then maybe I have a smaller muscle group like calves. Maybe I only want to do 3 sets of calves. And I find that as I start building all this stuff out, I have on day 3, maybe I only have, these 12 sets plugged into that workout so far. Then maybe I'll tack 3 sets of calves at the end of that workout. It's really kind of just like a plug and play balance type of scenario where you need to figure out what's going to fit and how you can balance everything across the amount of days that you're able to train. I, generally speaking, don't like to have more than 5 or 6 exercises in a strength training session, because then I think the strength training workout starts to get really long. You're in the gym for over like an hour and a half. It's just too much. It's not feasible for most people. So this is, it's simple when you break it down to the simple details and how all these pieces to the puzzle come together. And what I really hope is that this video helped you figure out how you might do it for yourself. And it's important to understand that you can do total body routines with this if you want. Just because you're used to doing like a designated leg day, it doesn't mean you have to do a designated leg day as part of this makeup. And oftentimes that might not be the best for you. If you want to specialize upper body muscle groups, maybe you'll just sprinkle in a little bit of lower body here and there. So maybe I'll do a leg extension on this day for 3 sets. And then on day 4, I'll do a hack squat, right? For, 4 sets or something like that. And then I can put a seated leg curl here for 3 sets to train the hamstrings. Like, it doesn't have to be that you have like a push, a pull, and a lower body day, or an upper body day and a lower body day. If you're prioritizing muscle groups, that probably won't work out well for you because you've got to fit volume in everywhere. So maybe you have a mostly lower body day, but because you're prioritizing your biceps, you start that workout with some bicep curls. That might be a lot of fun. So there's any number of ways you can structure this, and it's all about just getting the appropriate amount of volume and intensity completed throughout the week each week. All right, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, like I said, drop a like on it. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel, and make sure you hit those links in the show notes below to learn more about how to structure all of this stuff, how to build your own program. And if you want help building a program for you that's fully personalized to your goals, your lifestyle, and then you get that type of support and accountability along the way from me as your coach, check out the coaching link in the show notes. I would love to talk to you more about your goals and work together to reach those goals. So thanks again for watching. I'll talk to you again in the next one.